and welcome to Season 2 of Pack the Rod podcast. I'm your host, Audrey Marr, and as always, I am joined by Carlo Barone and Kylee Corman. We also have a special guest, Hayden Smith, with us today. Hayden was at the Big House with WIUX and on Saturday, and is also a fellow basketball beat reporter for the Hoosier Network. Hayden, thank you for coming on.
Thank you all for having me. I'm really excited to be on the pod.
It should be very fun. And I mean, speaking of basketball, massive week so far for Indiana with Liam McNeely committing on Sunday and possibly Boogie Fland on Friday. Should be a very fun season to cover. How are you guys feeling about basketball?
It'll be interesting because no one really knows how good the team is. They have a lot of good players, but they don't know how it's all going to mesh together. So it'll be interesting. A lot of people count IU out. They seem kind of in the middle of the Big Ten. With the recruits, I mean, they've got players that they can match up with anyone. It's just whether they gel together and figure it out. That's how far that's going to be. And they have some tough games at the beginning, but I think by the time middle of Big Ten season comes, that is when we'll really realize how good this year's team is, at least. And honestly, I don't know how many players are going to leave after this year or not. We have a lot of young guys, or IU has a lot of young guys, but it depends. I mean, who gets hurt, who performs. They've got a lot of potential, but how they get it together is going to be really the deciding factor on how good this team is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of new faces for sure, but if they live up to the hype, it should be a pretty exciting basketball season. But we'll see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of talent on this team, and I'm really excited to see how they perform, and especially with how Mike Woodson has gotten into the transfer portal and gotten high caliber recruits like Mackenzie Mbako. That is now allowing him to get even higher caliber recruits. Liam McNeely, hearing whispers about potentially Boogie Fland's going to commit to Indiana. Wouldn't it just be incredible?
I don't think it's a coincidence that Hoosier hysteria.
Exactly.
I know.
Hoosier hysteria. He walks in with Gucci Mane. Everybody goes insane. Boogie Fland's with
crazy commitment.
Or it could be the complate opposite.
Just brings down the
it's
mood.
A slap in the face, and he commits to one of Indiana's biggest rivals, the Kentucky Wildcats.
Oh,
I didn't think about the other side of the coin.
Yeah, Kentucky. That's like I don't know. I think it's inevitable. I'm not sure about Derek Queen. I think Boogie Fland is a higher possibility than Derek Queen right now. But that got a bit off track. How were everybody weekends? How are your days?
I'm doing pretty good. One of my teachers canceled class. Got to get some groceries. found the Count Chocula cereal that I had when I was a kid. So I'm sure it won't taste anything like I remember it, but still exciting.
Nice.
Anyone else?
Anyone else?
The week is better than it was last week. A little stressed out last week, but this week we're kind of just going with the flow. I'm doing just fine.
It's been a week and it's Monday, but it's
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Oh, that's everything you need to know.
That sounds like you had a big Monday.
No.
If you don't know that it's Tuesday.
I went to sleep early last night.
Yeah.
I got some good rest, so I'm feeling good.
You caught up on your sleep. Let's start off. Indiana headed to Ann Arbor on Saturday to face the number 2 team in the nation, the Michigan Wolverines. It started off on a good note on both sides of the ball. Indiana had a 7-0 lead in the first quarter, but they remained scoreless for the rest of the game. What were your overall thoughts from what you guys saw on Saturday?
It was a really strong first 3 drives for Indiana. Like you said, both on offense and defense. Of course, the first drive ends up with interception by Taven Jackson. But prior to that, Indiana looked like a completely new offense, and Rod Carey looked like he was actually trending in the right direction and was about to prove a lot of the doubters wrong. Of course, we all know what ended up happening. Once Indiana really gave up that first touchdown, and then the second touchdown came, then the third, then the fourth, it all just started snowballing from there. And we all know once Indiana kind of gets behind, they just kind of collapse and just their fight completely leaves the atmosphere. But again, I really liked how the offense looked at first. I think that shows how Indiana could potentially perform against other teams that are near their caliber, like a Rutgers, like a Purdue, like a Michigan State. So it shows you that this team could still have the potential to get to that 6-win mark, but again, I'm not quite sure.
I think Rod Carey definitely showed a glimmer of hope for Indiana. His philosophy is do what works. And if a play didn't work, you didn't see that play ran again 2 times in a row. Jalen Lucas up the middle for 3 and out. That didn't happen, so I guess that's good. Again, what Hayden said, it sets Indiana up good for the next few games, but they just could not keep energy on both sides of the ball. I mean, Michigan's a good team, a tough team, and Alan said, when you go up against guys like that, you get beat up pretty quick, especially coming off a bye week, not necessarily used to the reps that Michigan provides, but yeah, there's a lot that we could talk about in that Michigan game. But those are the goods.
I will say the first quarter, you could argue that was their best quarter all season.
100%.
They looked like I was watching the game. I was like, this is not the team that I've watched for 6 weeks, 7 weeks in a row. Like, it was blowing my mind, to be honest. They were pressuring J.J. McCarthy. They played arguably better on defense than they did on offense, and they still allowed 52 in 3 other quarters. So, talk about a 180, but that first quarter was weird. Everyone in the press box was sitting there like, we know this is not gonna work, but like,
we know it's gonna happen.
How long until then? And it was, all it took was, like Hayden said, once the first touchdown came, the floodgates opened, and 52 points came on the board by the end of the game. So that first quarter was arguably, I would say, probably the best they've played, but they got away from the short passing game in the second half, whether that be they were down a lot and they got down quickly, or Michigan adjusted. They got away with it. In the first quarter, it showed. Rod Carey said, do what works and don't do what doesn't. And their short throws in the first quarter were working. And, Taven threw the interception on the first drive, but still, the fact that he got down there on a defense like Michigan, who's number 1 in the whole country, was encouraging. And, Jalen Lucas eventually scored the only touchdown that IU had the game, but that first quarter, if they can play like that, this team will be so much better. But the problem is, and we'll talk about it, is consistency, which they just simply don't have almost anywhere on the team.
I think another thing that Michigan has over Indiana, besides being
a lot of things,
the best team in the nation, is that they're actually able to adapt. They saw what Indiana was throwing at them, and they were able to then make adjustments and execute those adjustments, which, as we know, since week 1, Tom Allen has just been talking about evaluating and execution. Everyone's been saying this is the most evaluated team
of
ever.
All time. Any sport.
High school, college, NFL, everything. Most evaluated team. But that's where Indiana they don't know how to adjust and execute.
Yeah, I agree. I think it seemed like Michigan, they started off slow. They were using that time to evaluate this team, and I don't think their defensive coordinator said that they went into this game as a training camp game. So I think that's what they were doing. They were starting off as just evaluating everything, and they weren't prepared. I wouldn't say they weren't expecting the Indiana defense to come out. Speaking of the defense, they had 4 sacks, which was the most Michigan has allowed this entire season. And you guys all talked about the defense a little bit, but was there anything you saw specifically within the defense that stood out to any of you?
I got to say, 2 players that really stood out to me, of course, Aaron Casey, I thought he was phenomenal. He had 7 tackles, 1 sack. But another guy that kind of flew under the radar for me was Linnell Carr. He had 2 sacks himself and 2 tackles for loss. He played really well. And looking at the entire defense, obviously all of that's really in the first quarter, because after that you can't really judge the defense, because they just, like Carlos said, once the first touchdown came, the floodgates opened. But the defense looked a lot stronger. They just looked confident to me. They looked like this was a team that was prepared to go into hostile territory and get an upset in one way or another. But again, you got to be able to keep that up for the entire 4 quarters. You can't just do that for 1 quarter and then, all right, I'm going to take a vacation. I'm done. We did our job. No, you've got to be able to perform the entire game. I'm not saying that I expected Indiana to win this game or really even it to be competitive. I just expected Indiana to show a little bit more fight than they actually did.
Mm-hmm. I think the line on the defense looked great. That was amazing. I think their problems came more in the secondary. Guys were getting lost. Guys were getting beat on routes. I think, was it that first touchdown that there was a million people open in the end zone and everyone
almost
was...
all of the touchdowns for Michigan, they had people wide open. It was,
That's what you get whenever you have great wide receivers like Michigan has, and a great quarterback and a great coach.
But I also don't think that this is a new theme. I think the secondary looked really good in the Ohio State game. I was really impressed. After then, it's kind of fallen off a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I feel like with this defense has kind of shown up in under the brightest lights. Like, they showed up against Ohio State. I mean, they stuck with it pretty much throughout the game, only holding them to 23 points. And as we've all seen, Ohio State has gotten pretty good progressing into the season. But yeah, speaking of talking about the secondary, I agree. I think that they definitely have kind of taken down went a little bit downhill, but they definitely came.
When was the last time that the takeaway belt's been brought out?
Ooh.
Any time with Philip Dunham, but he didn't.
I think it
In a
was.
second.
Was it has it been since week 3?
No, they got one
Akron.
against Akron.
Yeah,
they did?
it would have been
Oh,
Akron
right.
because they didn't get one against
Yeah.
Maryland either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Akron.
Oh, jeez.
Ouch.
The belt's collecting some dust.
Well, I was
Just
gonna.
saying.
Yeah,
You're
it's
not
true.
wrong.
I was gonna try and go into more of a conversation into the secondary. Was there anything else you guys wanted to touch on that regarding the secondary?
I will say at the beginning of the season, I felt like we heard Kobe Minor's name a lot more, and now it's. I mean, as a person in the secondary, obviously you don't want your name getting called a lot because that means you're probably getting cooked. But I think his hot start to the season has definitely ended. And I mean, anytime you have 52 on the board and your defensive line's playing good, I mean, there's only so many things that they could point to. I'm not going to say it's all Kobe Minor's fault. I'm just saying it's an example of the secondary that started out strong. I remember the secondary that started out strong and now has kind of regressed. I think that defensive performance against Ohio State, honestly, is going to be a really big outlier, just like how week 1 was last year when they beat Illinois. And then Illinois ended up being really good that year for some reason. It's like, I don't get what happens between week to week, honestly. And you could be saying that for this team for the last 3 years. So, yeah, their secondary's definitely progressed down a little bit, but I think they can get it back if they, have some better coaches and make some changes. But
Do we need any more coaching changes at this point?
Actually, I think they need more evaluation.
That's actually a good way to describe that.
Yeah, they need to be evaluated more for sure. No, on some serious notes though, I think the secondary is definitely taking a step back. I think the whole defense as a whole is a step back. The only person I feel like week in and week out that has been consistent has been Aaron Casey.
Mm-hmm. I agree. But let's move on to the other side of the ball because there is a lot to talk about on the offense. Obviously, a big topic of conversation heading into the game. They started off looking pretty good. The Donovan McCulley to Jalen Lucas touchdown wasn't a play that we'd seen before, but it has been in the playbook, McCulley said after the game. But obviously the big storyline heading into the game was Rod Carey and what he could do with this offense. What did you guys see from their offensive production, and did you see any change, or do you think that there will be any change still heading into the season?
I think, like I said earlier, if a play didn't work, you didn't see that play immediately after. So I think there's definitely some learning, some learning going on there. They were converting on more third downs, which is something that they were terrible at. I think that it was like a 38% they converted on third down, which is completely acceptable if you want to have a good football team. The quarterback situation, we can get into that later.
We'll get into that.
But, oh my God.
Frustrating.
I'd definitely say Jalen Lucas was being used more as a receiver than a running back because we all know how good Jalen Lucas is and can be, but under Walt Bell's system, you can't run a guy that is that big straight into your offensive line because he's not gonna get. No, I don't know.
This is news to him.
Yeah, I'm not a football coach. I've never played football in my life, but I mean, my educated guess is you can't really do that. But
A 5'9" running back can't run right through a
shocker.
6'9" lineman? What?
Finally, you use him as a receiver, and he's got that quickness to be able to run really good routes and be able to burn some good corners, and that's exactly what he did. He had 5 receptions for 56 yards as opposed to just 2 carries. That's what we've seen Jalen Lucas excel at as a receiver. You saw that in the Louisville game. He had about 100 yards And, of course, you saw Indiana nearly won that game. It was one of their last close games besides the Akron game, but I don't really want to get into that game too much. But, yeah, I thought Jalen Lucas's play style is what really stood out to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he led the receiving stats. So he had, I don't have that pulled up, but he definitely led it. Anything else you guys want to touch on?
If we're going to talk about receiving, we can talk about Omar Cooper's catch.
Oh my gosh.
That was one of those plays that I held my breath and I was like, oh man, what did we just witness?
Yeah.
But he got right up and it counted.
I didn't even know that was an actual catch. I didn't know you could hit your head on the field and it counted as a catch.
I did not know that either.
Thank God he's all right, man.
Yeah, no.
You on your head, like.
I think a lot of people were just like, "Oh my gosh, did he make the catch?" But like he actually landed on his head. But yeah, well, you touched on it a little bit before. Indiana has yet another quarterback dispute. David Jackson. He started off the first 2 drives, looked pretty good despite that interception. The short passes were working for him. But then they moved on to Brendan Sorsby for the next couple of drives. Then they came out saying that Taven Jackson had a tiny bit of a injury with his throwing hand. But then he came back in, continued alternating every drive for the rest of the game. Donovan McCulley said after the game that from a quarterback's perspective, it's hard to get into a routine with that much rotation. But what is everybody's thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. Allen has been preaching that he wants consistency. You want to grow these players. You want to develop these players. How is this helping them? How is this developing them? Oh, you didn't do good, then we're taking you out. And just going through this rotation. These are 2 young guys. So if you want them to learn, if you want them to grow, yeah, they're up against Michigan. Put them out there. They're going to have to face Michigan, assuming they stay in the Big Ten, or maybe they'll go to Washington and be a Heisman runner. But, like,
ouch.
I mean, it's very frustrating to me because, yeah, Michael Penix is up for the Heisman. Tuttle is throwing touchdowns on you. I think Basilak's even doing all right at Bowling Green.
Yeah, they're okay.
They're fine.
Yeah.
But I just don't. You've lost these quarterbacks. Indiana started, I believe, 8 quarterbacks over the last 3 years. And even then, the only one to throw a touchdown is, again, a guy that used to be a quarterback, but they let him go to wide receiver. I don't really know what happened there. But you can't develop anyone. You're not going to get consistency when it's after halftime. Sorsby's been in a few times, and Taven go in cold. Oh, what? You didn't do what we wanted you. Like, what do you expect? And now Dexter Williams is getting brought in, and I mean, if you're really wanting to go through this whole quarterback battle, you have a few other quarterbacks. Blaise McKibben, like, throw him in. Let's see.
Yeah.
If you're not happy with these guys, because if they're not happy with these guys, what do these other guys look like? But it's definitely going to be interesting to see what happens with Dexter. Mm-hmm. I think, they said that he could be coming back within the next week or next 2 weeks. I don't know that I would throw him out there against Penn State. That's kind of a tough start, so maybe this week. But even then, coming off of an injury like that's a little difficult, so who knows where he's at. But this is a very frustrating topic to me. I just don't get it.
I mean, it's week 8 now, and it's crazy. I can't say I understand it, but I can see that maybe they want to do more evaluation with Rod Carey taking over that role, but I don't get that logic when he's been with the team the entire time. But it's just, I don't know. We'll get into, I have a section where we can pick our picks for who's going to start, but I don't see how they can evaluate something if they're going into every single drive, because one, Taven looked good on that first drive, and then you're pulling him. It just doesn't make any sense to me. But
you have to pick a quarterback and stick with it for the rest of the year. Like you said, we're already in week 8. Why are we still having this conversation? It's not like, say, Taven Jackson's gone down with the season-ending injury, and now you're trying to battle with, ooh, should we start this guy? Should we start this guy? No, Taven and Sorsby have been perfectly fine all season long. Pick one, stick with it, and build the offense around that guy. And a big thing I want to point out, Kylee, can we name those 8 quarterbacks that have started for Indiana?
Okay.
So hold on, you got Connor Bazelak, Taven Jackson, Brendan Sorsby, Jack Tuttle,
Mike Penix, obviously.
Mike Penix,
McCauley.
Donovan McCauley,
Dexter
we're missing
Williams.
Dexter
Do we have
Williams.
Jack Tuttle?
Yep, we're missing one.
Oh.
It's a weird one.
I know it. I know it.
Since 2020?
I think so.
I think it.
Oh, it's he played against Michigan for the one drive and then got injured.
That was that.
No, I know the name. I remember him playing. It was one drive.
I'm yeah. Shoot, I'm stuck on it.
I apologize I brought this up. Now
No, I'm glad you did.
we're
I need
deep
to think.
into this now. We're not going past this section
No,
until
this
we
is
get to
good.
this.
This is good.
Is it Dexter?
No.
No.
It was last year. I don't know if it was
Last
against
year.
Michigan.
Hold on.
It was a game where the game has already got.
Oh,
it was whenever Jack Tuttle originally
It was,
went down with an injury.
Grant Gremmel.
Grant Gremmel.
Grant
That's who it is.
Okay.
All right, there we go. There's all 8 quarterbacks.
All right, that's it for the
All
podcast.
right. Thank you all for having me on. I'm
And
leaving.
you know what? That's just. I think it's 8. It could be 9. I don't know. I'm pretty
pretty-
sure. I'm pretty
No,
sure.
I think I
that
saw
it's
8 too. Yeah, I think I saw 8 too. But well, that's a good way
Where,
to close.
where is Grant Gremmel these days?
Not with Indiana.
That's actually
Is he not?
No, he moved on from Indiana. Obviously after last year, he didn't graduate.
he only says Indiana though. Yeah, I don't think he's.
I think he's
He's
still
not on the roster.
I think he tried to enter the transfer portal.
He might.
And
Is he just done?
He might be done. I don't know why I found his LinkedIn, but it says University of St. Francis. So
Sorry,
we might
Grant
have just-
Gremmel, you gave us some great memories.
But well, that was a good way to kind of close out our Michigan discussion. But let's head into some Week 8 predictions.
Can we please get Hayden on the camera doing this? He's done it so many times.
This is my Jalen Hood-Schifino. I might have to call it the Liam McNeely now, so I will bring
Yeah.
basketball back into this.
I didn't see that, so I would have switched to it before. But let's head into our predictions. Sorry. Indiana faces Rutgers for homecoming weekend at Memorial Stadium on Saturday. And as always, we're going to dive into some quick predictions. But make sure to stay tuned later this week as there will be another episode going into a deeper dive of this weekend's game. But heading into this weekend, Indiana is 2-4, Rutgers is 5-2, and they're playing for bowl eligibility at this point. In regards to Indiana, is this a must-win for them?
I think this is a must-win. I mean, it is a must-win. Mathematically, it's a must-win because I'm willing to bet they're 100% for sure not beating Penn State. I feel like that's a safe thing to say, but
No.
I don't know. I'm going to quote my late great-grandfather, not my great-grandfather, just my grandpa, who was a huge fan of college football. The only bowl they're going to is the toilet bowl.
Oh, classic. Classic. Let's go.
I would love to go on a trip to cover a bowl game, but I don't think that's going to happen. Earlier this season, I thought for sure this would be a good game, and it might still be a good game, but, I mean, it's homecoming. Indiana and Rutgers have been close, but I think this year Rutgers has got them beat. Even though it's home, even though it's homecoming, I think this is just a tired Indiana team, even though they're only 2 weeks off of the bye. I don't think this one is going to be a win.
I think now they're starting to get a little mentally checked out. I mean,
How could you not?
Yeah, no.
You could see guys like frustrated, like they're coming in, they're answering questions about the quarterbacks. They've been doing this for 2 months in a row. I mean, McCauley was like, yeah, half the time we don't know who we're going out with. They just kind of, we go in the huddle, we jog out. Oh, it's Taven or it's Brendan. And they're starting to be like, come on, we gotta. They don't have an identity, and they're 2 losses away from bowl eligibility being gone. Or I guess 3 losses away, but one of them being Penn State, who they're going to probably lose to. So I mean, the room for error is so thin, and I think every game for now is going to be a must-win because they're terrible on the road like they have been the last couple of years, and the home games they have are definitely winnable, if you want to say. I mean, you've got Michigan State, and Wisconsin's not going to be easy, but I don't think they're going to win that one either. But, I mean, they've got Rutgers and Michigan State outside of that. I mean, those are two teams towards the bottom of the Big Ten, just where Indiana is. It's kind of similar teams, but if you look at the last couple of years, Rutgers has just annihilated Indiana. Last year, I think IU had like almost under 100 yards of total offense to like the fourth quarter, and they just lost. They had that Jalen Lucas kick return start the game. They went out to a nice lead, sounds like Michigan, and then they just got killed. I mean, their defense played well. They only allowed, I think, like 19 points or something. Hayden, I don't know if you're double-checking, but...
last year's score was 24-17 Rutgers.
For Rutgers, yeah. I mean, that game was not close, though. And then the year before that, it was at home, and they just got smacked. It was like 30-3 or something. That was a beatdown. I don't think they get it here, but I think every game from now on that's not a team with a rank in front of it is definitely a must-win.
I'm going to be precise about my wording here. I don't think it is an absolute must-win game for Indiana, but it certainly could give them breathing room for them to still be eligible for a bowl game. Because if you look at the schedule after this one, like you all said, they're at Penn State next weekend, and then they're back home against Wisconsin. Winnable game, but they're going to have to play really well against the Badgers. Then you go at Illinois, a team you beat last year. The Illini are not great this season.
They're really bad.
But they did beat Maryland.
They did beat Maryland, which that was an absolute shocker. But a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. Then
unless you're Indiana.
Unless you're Indiana. That's tough. Then you're back home against the Spartans. Again, a team you beat last year. Michigan State's not great this year whatsoever. And then you travel to play your rivals, Purdue. Purdue's not good this year either. Again, I don't think it's a must-win for Indiana. It certainly gives you breathing room. Indiana has the chance to get this done if they really go out there and play four full quarters of good football. That's kind of a tongue twister right there. They have the ability to win this game.
I think they have a chance against Illinois. I went to the
100%.
Illinois Nebraska game, and they're just as inconsistent as IU's. And it's not like they have game-changing players. They don't have Chase Brown or Tommy DeVito on offense, which is, I mean, their whole program. They lost their coach, lost their starting quarterback, starting running back. I mean, they're just as inconsistent as IU.
The only thing is I don't trust Indiana on the road.
I don't
Granted,
either.
they got a road victory in Michigan State last year. Absolutely shocked about that one.
That was a wild game.
They haven't gotten a Big Ten road win besides that game in quite some time. It's been since 2020 since they've gotten a road win against a Big Ten team. They've only got, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 Big Ten wins since 2020. This team has not been good whatsoever in Big Ten conference play. Michigan State, Illinois.
I think you're right.
Sounds right to me.
Oh, geez, that is really, that's a hard way to put it.
And both of those were last year.
At least the conference is getting easier, right, guys?
Yeah, for sure.
I do think that this is a must-win for Indiana. I mean, you all touched on it. No one knows the consistency. Well, we know the consistency of Indiana, but no one knows how they're going to play on the road and if they will show up. But I think that, I mean, looking at the final score for Rutgers last year, if this is a team, like if there is an Indiana team that can hold this Rutgers offense, which is one of Rutgers' best offenses in a very long time, I think it is this Indiana team's defense. Because, I mean, obviously, it's a better defense than what we are used to seeing to previous seasons, but I don't know. I think this is a must-win. I think we can get into our score predictions later and what they need to do to win. But for the first time last week, for the first time of the season, Dexter Williams, we're going to go into our quarterbacks now, but Dexter Williams was active, but he was only being used as an emergency situation. Tom Allen said that he hopes that he will be ready for this week or next week, but with the possibility of a healthy and an active Dexter Williams and the question between Jackson and Sorsby, Who are your picks for who is going to start on Saturday, week 8?
That's really a shot in the dark. Who knows? I'm going to go ahead and say Sorsby because I think it seems like deep down that's who they're trusting a little bit more. So I'm going to say Sorsby, but I think that Dexter, again, I said it earlier, I would not just throw Dexter the first time getting hit in a year since a devastating injury against Penn State. That wouldn't... My choices do not always agree with what the Indiana coaches decide, so that really means nothing. But I think you start Sorsby, and you know what? They're probably going to play 3 quarterbacks. Start Sorsby, maybe see a little Taven, and I would throw Dexter out there, get some reps, get some practice.
Go for it.
I was going to say, might as well get Donovan McCulley under center at this point. Yeah, that's my pick. No, that's not. I think... I think Sorsby played. The numbers don't reflect it, but I think Sorsby played better against Michigan than Taven did. I think Taven had a few good drives, but then he was getting frustrated. And he threw a brutal interception in the second half. The first one was tipped, but he had a guy wide open. I mean, both the interceptions were just pretty brutal. I think Sorsby will get another crack at it this week. I don't think that's going to be. Not necessarily the locker room is backing Taven. I think they're just tired with all the changes. Mm-hmm. But I think it's going to be Sorsby, and then probably next week it'll be Jackson, and the week after that it'll be someone. It'll just be a QB carousel.
And then the week after that it'll be you.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess I'll start the bucket game. I got this. Like I mentioned last year. I mean, I used to play quarterback at recess all the time. I'm not that bad. I would like to.
You got an arm?
I've got a pretty good arm. I can do it.
I mean, I could just get my shoulder warmed up and we're ready to go. But I think the players are tired of all this changing, but I think it's going to be Sorsby.
See, Dexter is definitely an interesting pick, but my big thing about Dexter, he showed great flashes last year, especially that Michigan State game was just special. The Purdue game at the start of it, special. He was running circles around the Purdue defense. But he just hasn't shown that he really has a great passing ability. I mean, again, you go back to that Michigan State game, Indiana had, I don't remember the exact number, but it was well under 50 yards.
They also had 2 passes the entire game.
Exactly. You can't have that. You can't have that. You're not going to be able to unless you have a
conditions
Saquon
were
Barkley
rough that day.
Yeah,
2 passes is 2 passes, whether it's rain or shine.
Unless you have a Saquon Barkley and you have the ability to run around everybody, you're going to have to throw the football. I mean, it's just plain and simple. My pick is I say you got to stick with Taven. He's been your guy all season long. Why deviate from him now? You've basically
They already have.
I completely agree, but they've kind of built their offense around Taven. I mean, you kind of have to if he's already started well over 50% of the games that he's played in this season. He transferred to Indiana for a reason. Don't give him one to leave.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm going to go with Hayden. I was going to go anyway with Taven because... yeah, I mean, Tom Allen can't announce that Taven Jackson is their guy over and over repeatedly every week and then just throw someone else in during the middle of the game and then start them for the rest of the season because he was saying continuously that he is their guy for the season. 180 on that this week.
I think Taven makes sense. I think that's who they should start again. He came here for Indiana. He wants to play. He needs to grow and develop. Otherwise, he's going to transfer right on to the next school and be another great. But I think realistically, if we're looking at this program and looking at the mess that they're in, they're probably just going to start Sorsby. It's a
Blaze McKibben's going to come out of the locker room.
My money's still on one of these days we're going to be in the press box. Where's Carlo?
I'm taking snaps.
He's out there.
What number are you choosing, Carlo?
See, my number growing up was always 15, but Brendan Sorsby doesn't actually have it. I know. I'll probably go with 10 because that was my high school number. I don't think there's a number. There probably is.
Why not number 9?
Nah, that's retired at this school. It seems like, especially after this year.
You're taking away Darren McCulley?
Oh, I'm sorry, Darren. wait, what position?
He's a wide receiver.
Oh, I can't then. Okay. I'll probably go with, I don't know.
Any number you're going to throw out there, I'm probably going to immediately shoot down.
I mean, there's a lot of people, but I'm ready, Mr. Allen. Just give me the playbook in 3 days' notice. I'll be there, no matter what.
Closing us out, let's get everybody's final score predictions.
I'll start. I think it's going to be close at the beginning. I think Rutgers is probably going to run away with it. I'm going to say 28-17 Rutgers.
Carlo, why don't you go? I kind of want to see what everybody else says.
I just looked up the spread just to get an idea. And Rutgers are only
5.
favored by 5. That's not that bad. Okay.
You going to side with Vegas?
That's why I don't
That's not
think
even
it's
a
going to be
touchdown.
as
That's
big
not
of a
even a touchdown.
blowout as
Okay.
people are saying it's going to be. I mean, Michigan State, we know that they're
Do it, Audrey.
obviously.
Pick him.
I'm not going with my pick right now. I'm just talking.
I know.
But I don't know. I think it's not. I don't think it can be as much of a blowout because they only beat Michigan State by 3. When I don't know where that was. That at Michigan State. That was at home.
It was at Rutgers.
It was
They were
at
actually
Rutgers.
down by like 20 in the fourth quarter, and they came back
Yeah.
to the game too.
So
Isaiah Pacheco was there. Absolute goat.
all right, but I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as big of a blowout. I think this defense can show up. I'm not going to go with my pick just yet. Who wants to go first?
I'll go. I think. Geez. I mean, they need to win really, really bad. It's this season starting to turn out like it did last year, where they lost 7 in a row. The people on last year's team definitely don't want to go all off season just to work for another 3-9, 4-8 season. I think it's going to be. I think that Louisville game is going to hurt more and more as these losses start to come and they get closer to bowl eligibility. If they get closer to bowl eligibility, I think Rutgers is going to take this one in a close game. It's going to be another heartbreaker, and it's definitely going to be another one of those games where if they somehow get to 4 or 5 wins, this will be one of them where they're like, well, we should have came out with a win. I'm going to go with Rutgers, and I'm going to say their offense is not bad. Their quarterback is playing well this year. I'm going to go 31-24.
Okay, I guess I'll follow this one up. I'm just going to preface this by saying I have not, outside of the Indiana State game and the Akron game, I have not yet to pick Indiana to win a game besides those two.
Uh-oh.
I think it's going to be a great crowd on hand. It's going to be homecoming. Indiana's going
You tell
to
'em,
feed.
Hayden.
Indiana's going to feed off of that energy. It's going to be a slow start for the Hoosiers. They're going to give up probably about 2 touchdowns, go down by 14 into the half, and then Indiana is going to get one of those great motivational speeches by Tom Allen. They're going to fight
Hell yeah.
back, win via a game-winning field goal
Okay.
by Chris Freeman.
Okay.
Indiana wins 24-21. Jalen Lucas has 100 receiving yards, and Taven Jackson throws for nearly 300 yards.
Wow.
How long's that final kick?
I'm going to say Indiana marches down the field relatively, but it's going to be about a 40-yarder.
What hash?
Left hash.
Left hash? Oh, you think? Okay. All right. All right,
Okay,
Freeman.
here's my question for you.
Go for
you
it.
said
Shoot.
you think that, okay, I will. there's going to be a good crowd,
Yep.
and Indiana's going to come out of half rejuvenated. They got that Michael special stuff, the little Gatorade bottle from
The student
from
section
Looney
will be
Tunes.
gone by halftime, just to preface.
How big is this crowd that's going to help carry out this energy?
It's going to be very similar to that Illinois game at the start of the year last year, where you got about, I'd say, a little less than half of the student section, but they're really, really loud, and they're just hyping up the team, and you got a great crowd on the outside. Again, you're going to have probably half to nearly 3/4 of the student section gone, because that's Indiana, guys.
But they're going to get it done with.
They're going to get
that
it done.
crowd.
Game-winning field goal. Chris Freeman's
Respect.
going to be immortalized, and he's going to turn into the next Charles Campbell.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
kick
miss-
Campbell made last year was crazy.
I miss Charles Campbell.
Respect.
Well, this sounds like I'm lying, but I was actually going to go with the same kind of ending as you. I think they're going to end on a game-winning field goal. I don't know about my score yet, but I think that this really does depend on how the defense plays. Because if this defense can show up and really hold this Rutgers offense, which is, again, one of the best Rutgers offenses that the team has seen, Also, I think it also depends on how they're practicing. Indiana's practicing with their offense, because if they are just completely switching with quarterbacks again, just like Donovan McCulley said, it's hard to get a sense of rotate with all of this rotation. So if this offense is just not used to one quarterback this week, that can be very telling for how this game goes and how the offense shows up as well. So I think if they need to make their decision on who their quarterback is yesterday. So if they didn't do that
About 8 weeks ago.
that too. Okay, scoring wise, I'm gonna go 31-28. Indiana. This is
A little bit higher scoring. Okay. If there's a defense that can get this done, I think Indiana is the one that can hold Rutgers.
I think the defense can do it, but if they are out on the field for way longer than they need to be, the offense can't convert, can't get those first downs, can't maintain possession of the ball, then they're going to get beat up pretty quick, and I think that could be a huge downfall.
Let's go get her done.
I think the biggest thing is their offense has got to play well, because when their offense is doing long drives and it gives the defense a break, like Kylee was just mentioning, I mean, if they just keep getting 3 and outs, it's just going to be, they're just going to get worn down. You've seen it plenty of times this year, last 100 years of Indiana football. They just get worn down, and then it becomes basically an endurance game. And when you have your defense out there almost the entire quarter and you've got the other guys sitting down, they're going to play better because they're getting more rest. It's just it's a teeter and a totter that they need to win. If they want to win a football game the rest of the year, their offense has to have long 5-minute, 6-minute drives, 10+ plays, and they need to score touchdowns. You don't win in college football in the Big Ten East scoring field goals. You need touchdowns to win games, and that's simply something they just don't necessarily have consistently right now. So it's going to be, I think if they, like you guys mentioned, you guys picked IU, we picked Rutgers. I think if they get out to a fast start, that's their only recipe for success. Because if they're playing behind like they have all year, we've seen it and it just hasn't worked.
Yeah, I think they need to start off, they definitely do need to start off hot, because that's the kind of team that they are. Either they start off hot in the beginning or they start off hot in the second half. So I think they do need to start off hot in the beginning, and I think that's a possibility that they will. I agree with you. I don't think it'll be a massive, massive crowd.
No.
I think it'll be a good crowd, though, and I think that they will feed off of that. I think, speaking more about the defense, I think that Aaron Casey is going to have a monster game, as well as Andre Carter. I think Andre Carter hasn't been as loud as he was in the beginning of the season, but I think this is a game that he comes back and he has like a monster game for Indiana. But yeah, anything else anyone wants to touch on before we close it out?
I will say, Audrey, if IU wins this weekend, we'll all be tied up in the score predictions. We'll all be 6-1. But if they lose, you'll be 5-2, and Kylee and I will be 7-0.
Wow, you guys haven't missed so far this season?
Big.
Wow.
I will say, I only missed.
impressive.
I think I only missed one last year.
Not to like brag or anything.
Here we go.
But that Louisville game, I predicted the score right on.
You said 21-14?
I said Indiana would lose by a touchdown, 21-14. Not to brag,
Did
but
you say that?
Hey, I said that Akron game was going to be a trap game.
You were right.
Yeah,
you were
you
so
were
right
right.
about that.
Don't-
You were
And
so right.
Remind me
I
of that
said it was
game.
going to overtime before it
Please.
was close to
Oh, it
that.
didn't just go to overtime. It
Please.
went to 1 in the
Four.
morning.
4 overtimes.
I don't want to hear about that game anymore.
That game lives rent free in my head.
I just think about how tired I was.
Oh, I want that like any game that I didn't want to go to overtime. That was the number one. I was like, okay, I just don't want this to go to overtime. And they said, we won't just go to overtime. We'll have 4 of
Four.
them.
I was
That's
a part
about
of the
right.
great migration of the student
I
section.
remember
that went
seeing
from
you.
one
You
to the
saw
other.
I saw you.
Funny.
That was some of the
That's respect.
the
Yeah.
best I've
Yeah.
ever had. Just imagine if
Drake.
they had an actual crowd for that Penn State
That-
game a few years ago.
Oh my gosh!
Michael
Of course,
Penix.
literally, of course, the best game in IU or one of them.
Field rush.
Honestly, it might be the
Takedown.
IU football Super Bowl. That
Oh,
game.
yeah.
But
Take down
there's
the
like no one
goalposts.
there. That's so,
Winner of
that
sight.
I mean, that right there describes Indiana football
Yep.
history, everything. The best game they ever had is, of course,
The best
COVID.
year.
And there's literally no one there.
Michael Penix for
It's-
Heisman.
There was an edit I saw on TikTok, and it was, what was the song? Was it Do You Get Deja Vu? I think that was a
I don't
song.
have TikTok. I don't know.
You
don't
watched it. You
What?
watched it. I sent it to you.
Oh,
Okay, but it was.
I just caught you in a lie.
It was Taven's run in that Louisville game.
I did watch this. I did watch this.
And then it switched to the Michael Penix dive and
Flashbacks.
I think everyone in the press box was just like,
Oh, yeah.
Michael Penix? Like, it
Yeah.
was literally.
that would have. That would have put the game.
Superman it
tied
a little bit more.
That could have changed the trajectory.
Oh, what
the
a
whole
The question
season.
is, do you go for the 2-point conversion in that situation?
Yeah, 100%.
But there's
1000%.
too much time left. What if you don't get it?
Wait, actually, now I think about it, it was like what, 6,
I would've
7,
just
8
gone
there
minutes?
was-
Yeah, there was a bit of time
There was
left.
at
Well,
least
actually, I'd
5
kick it.
minutes.
I'd kick it then.
Kick the field
They
goal,
were
tie the
kicking
game.
them in the second half. So
Yeah.
I think, honestly, if they got one more possession, they win that game. to
Knowing
be
Tom
honest.
Allen, we would have gone for the 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
Sorry, Indiana.
And then not gotten it, and then lost by 1.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Well, I guess. Wait, one more? Okay.
Yep.
Well, that will do it for us here in the studio. Thank you for tuning into episode 12 of Pack the Rod podcast. Hayden, thank you for coming on.
Thank you
this
all
was
for having
very
me.
fun.
Yeah, thanks,
Had a
Hayden.
blast.
Yeah, it was very, very fun. But glad we got to do a deep dive into Michigan and Rutgers a little bit. But I've been Audrey Marr, joined alongside Carlo Barone and Kylee Corman. Make sure to keep up with the Hoosier Network on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, or X, and TikTok for all of your IU football and just overall athletic updates. We'll be at Memorial Stadium on Saturday for all you need to know, so stay tuned for more content. As well as for Hoosier Hysteria, Hayden and I will be there, and we will have some content for the Hoosier Network. But that will be it, and we will see you next week.